Hi, this is Di, and today we're going to talk about foster care. Foster care is something that's very close to my heart. We had 11 foster kids in 5 years, which is not a huge number at all. We were primarily respite foster parents. Respite foster parents take a child for a short period of time to give their regular foster parents a break. Also, we did receiving care, which was when children first come into foster care. They would come to our house until a permanent placement could be found or they were returned to live with their family. So between receiving and respite, we had those 11 kids. So I threw out and asked people their questions about foster care, and so I'm going to answer them now. The first person, Julia, asked me, what was the process of becoming a foster parent like? And it's a great question because you wouldn't know if you've never experienced it. Being a foster parent is scary at first and exciting. It is overwhelming and slow, and it happens so quickly. So it's a bunch of mixed emotions. There's a whole world out there that needs help and needs love, and our most vulnerable citizens are our children, right? I mean, they can't even feed themselves if they don't have people care for them. And so they need people to come in and take the place of their parents when their parents can't provide for them, or to help out their foster parents and give their foster parents a break. Becoming a foster parent was challenging. It's an invasion of privacy, that's for sure. If you're a very private person and you don't like sharing your information, or talking about your life story, or telling about the details about your family, then foster parenting isn't for you. Because foster parenting is under a lot of scrutiny, and it should be. When you're bringing in children and they need to be protected, all the more reason that the foster parents should be scrutinized and looked over and made sure that they're good people to be able to take kids in. And that process can be really, really super invasive. And so if you're a person who doesn't want to find old documents or copy things or go through rigmarole, then foster parent's not for you, because the process is daunting and it's slow and it has a lot of paperwork and surprises along the way. Boy, that prepares you for foster parenting, because foster parenting is the exact same way. So it's a good thing to get used to having people in your business and getting paperwork turned in. They're very primary parts of becoming a foster parent. Stacy comments, I had a foster brother and it was good, but do you know about the process of foster to adopt? I will talk about how one becomes a foster parent and how one fosters to adopt. We adopted 2 children from the foster care system, and one of those situations was when we were licensed foster parents. So first, the family who wants to become a foster parent needs to decide if they're going to license with the state or a private agency. For many, many years, private agencies help place children. Back in the old days, there were orphanages and group homes were much more prevalent, and the state came into that in the 70s, I think, and started placing kids. And so private agencies have a big foothold in the world of foster care and adoption. There's a couple ways of looking at it. When you look at an agency, you want to look at their philosophy, and you want to think about their ratios. I was a state licensed foster parent, and I can tell you that a lot of the case managers who worked on my children's cases were at a ratio of 40-1. I then went to work for a private agency and found that the ratio for those kids to their case managers was 8-1. So you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out which kids got more attention from their agency and which simply couldn't. The state doesn't have a right of refusal. Every kid that comes into foster care goes through that state system. Private agencies do have a right of refusal. They can say, no, we're not going to take that kiddo, or that's too tough of a case, or it's too complicated. So they have a little more say in which kids come into their program. Okay, they're looking for kids that are matched to the families that they have in their pool. You want to look at the philosophy of the agency as well. You want to see how they view different issues and how they partner with families. You want to talk to somebody that's been licensed with them. If you don't know where to start looking, Google's a great place. You can look up different agencies and find out things about them. And the state or private agency thing is something you can go back and forth about and think about. Just know that if you turn in an application packet to the state or to a private agency, you are licensing with that agency. That's when you've made up your mind. Both the state and private agencies are going to offer orientation classes. An orientation class is a great place to get that packet, to talk about all of your questions about foster parenting, to talk to people that are actually involved in that system. And so orientation is a really, really important step. So after you find an agency and you give them a call, make sure that you take time to attend an orientation class. After orientation, then you are going to enter into the training phase. To become a foster parent, you have to be trained. And of course, that's going to vary from state to state. They're each going to have their number of hours they require, and each agency is going to handle giving out those hours in a different way. When I worked for the state, you had a big class that you needed to sit in for many, many hours to learn about being a foster parent. When I worked for a private agency, they were able to meet with folks one-on-one and go through the material one-on-one so that they could get foster families through. Now, the question was foster to adopt. That is something that has changed over the last few years to be more common. What at least Washington State has done is move more towards foster to adopt, in that they ask all foster parents to think about, are they willing to adopt? What kind of kids are they willing to adopt? Under what circumstances would they want to adopt? And all the paperwork that they fill out from that application packet to the very end includes the adoption piece. That way, if a child in foster care becomes legally free and available for their adoption, they can go ahead and adopt that child. They don't have to add a whole bunch of extra paperwork to the process. Foster parents are often called upon to adopt the children in their care should they become legally free. That's a whole nother process. So you're going to attend all of the classes and learn all the things. The next is there is going to be a getting to know you process, and like an interview that's going to take place where the licensor, the person that licensed your foster home, is going to interview you. Now, most people do that interview during the first home inspection. So you're going to get your house ready to be a foster home. And much like getting a daycare license for your house is different than babysitting, doing foster care is a lot different than having the neighbor kids over to play. There are actual forms with lists of the things that have to be checked off to get your house ready. And of course, that's going to vary. Agencies might be stricter than the state, and it's going to vary from state to state. And if you're watching this internationally, obviously it's going to be very different in your province or whatever. But there's going to be a list of things that are safety hazards, and they're going to want you to make those improvements to your home. Now, a lot of people ask if they have to have a separate bedroom for the foster child. And you know, that is going to vary by agency to agency. There is usually a mandatory amount of square footage in your home. And it really depends on what the kids have been exposed to. If a child coming to your care has been sexually or physically violated, that might not be a child you want to share a bedroom with one of your kids. And so it's a thought like, does this kid need their separate space? And you know, sometimes they really do. And foster parents are usually compensated at a higher rate when they take kids that can't share a bedroom, because you simply have to have a bigger house and it costs more money. And yes, foster parents do receive a payment. The statistical average that I had read, and of course this is a little out of date, is it covers about 25% of your expenses. So no one gets rich being a foster parent. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to be a foster parent and quit my job, because it won't cover it. But you can get back some of the expenses so that you can go ahead and say yes. There we go. Get.
Crispy burrito.
And what are those? You can't even say it with a straight face, can ya?
No, potato pies.
What are they calling here?
Fancy pies.
They're very Mexican.
Mexicans are well known for their use of potato tots.
I was just in Mexico and I never saw any tater tots.
See potatoes?
Not really, no. I bought a potato, we ate it, but no. And then I got
Known
this.
for their use of corn, right?